what Vladimir Putin is doing now is playing for time, and he's playing this president like a fiddle. What we need to do is to put pressure on Vladimir Putin in every way we can to ensure that we can get them to the negotiating table.
Well, I disagree with this playing with a fiddle analogy, because the truth of the matter is when Vladimir Putin woke up this morning, he had the same set of sanctions on him that he's always had since the beginning of this conflict, and Ukraine was still getting armaments and shipments from us and from our allies. And what the president's trying to do is end a war. He's trying to end a bloody, costly war that neither side can win, and people are dying every single day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Listen, if you ever wanted a perfect, crystal clear example of the absolute disconnect between the Washington, D.C. establishment and actual real-world reality, you are about to see it. We've got a clip today from a recent Senate hearing, and it is a masterclass in how to dismantle empty partisan talking points. You have Democrat Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who is sitting up there practically reading off a teleprompter, giving us the same tired cable news talking points about Russia and Ukraine. She's trying so hard to get her little viral soundbite for MSNBC. She wants to paint the new administration as weak, saying Putin is playing us like a fiddle. And then you have Marco Rubio. Guys, Rubio doesn't yell. He doesn't throw a tantrum. He just calmly steps up and drops the hammer of truth. So hard that you can practically see the wind get knocked out of Shaheen's sails. It is incredibly frustrating watching these arrogant politicians push for endless war without looking at the facts, but watching Rubio drag her back down to planet Earth is just chef's kiss. Grab a coffee. You're gonna want to watch this whole exchange. Let's roll the tape.
I want to move to Ukraine because we heard the conversation that the president had with Vladimir Putin, the phone conversation where Putin didn't agree to any meaningful negotiation that would end this war in Ukraine. As President Trump has admitted, Vladimir Putin is taking him for a ride. Now, we have a bipartisan bill in the Senate that's led by Lindsey Graham. It has 80 sponsors. I understand that the House members are ready to take this up on a discharge petition if we pass it out of the Senate. How much longer until we rein Putin in? And are you prepared to support that sanctions bill that Graham and Blumenthal and 78 other members of the Senate support?
Well, let me answer your last question first, and that is about the bill. We obviously can't control what Congress does, and we've told the Russians this. Not now, 6-8 weeks ago. I believe, Senator Shaheen, you were involved in a conversation that made it clear to the Russians what would happen if there was no progress made. And that's been repeated multiple times. I would also make this point, and it's important. Every single sanction, not one sanction has been lifted on the Russians. Every single sanction that was in place under the previous administration remains in place. So this idea we've given up leverage, well, we have the same leverage today we had under the previous administration.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I would argue that the leverage that we've given up is taking NATO membership off the table, taking away a commitment to continue to help the Ukrainians with intelligence sharing and with military equipment and arms that they need to help fight this war.
Well, that continues. There was a pause for 1 week. All of that was restarted.
That was intelligence sharing, though, but it doesn't cover the equipment and arms.
Oh, absolutely. That program has not been rescinded. They continue to receive armaments from the United States.
And we continue to fund what the Ukrainians need as the president. And are you prepared to pass another supplemental bill to support them?
Well, that's a different decision. That's a different question. That's not up for me to decide. The White House would have to make a determination about whether to come to Congress for a supplemental. But everything that's been approved and congressionally appropriated is ongoing. In fact, to the extent that the Ukrainians have asked for anything additional, what they've asked for is air defenses, Patriot units, which frankly we don't have. But we are working closely with our NATO allies. There are NATO allies that do have some batteries of Patriot missiles that they could provide or transfer over to the Ukrainians to defend, for example, the airspace of Kyiv and other places. And we've been encouraging in that front and working alongside our partners there to get deliveries of some of these systems. As you can imagine, none of these countries want to give up their Patriot systems either. But we can't make them fast enough, and part of the challenge we have in Ukraine is that munitions are being expended substantially faster than the ability of the broader West, not just us, but the West, to produce them. Now, that said, on the issue of Ukraine, here's what we can all agree on. There is no military solution to this crisis.
Right.
It will have to end in a negotiated settlement. And the fundamental challenge we have in Ukraine is this. Russia wants what they do not currently have and are not entitled to, and Ukraine wants what they cannot regain militarily. And that's been the crux of the challenge.
I don't disagree with that at one level, but on the other hand, what Vladimir Putin is doing now is playing for time, and he's playing this president like a fiddle. And the longer he plays it, the more opportunity he has to gain territory in Ukraine, and the harder it's going to be to get him to the table. But what we need to do is to put pressure on Vladimir Putin in every way we can to ensure that we can get them to the negotiating table.
Well, I disagree with this playing with a fiddle analogy, because the truth of the matter is when Vladimir Putin woke up this morning, he had the same set of sanctions on him that he's always had since the beginning of this conflict, and Ukraine was still getting armaments and shipments from us and from our allies, and the European Union is about to impose additional sanctions, and the U.S. is looking for no Patriot batteries to be able to transfer from other NATO nations into Ukrainian hands. And what the president's trying to do is end a war. He's trying to end a bloody, costly war that neither side can win, and people are dying every single day. And so, but this notion that I don't, what has Putin gained throughout this? He hasn't gotten a single concession. He hasn't gotten a single sanction lifted.
And the more time he gets without additional pressure on Russia, the more incentive he's got to continue to gain territory and continue to play for time.
Wow, just wow. I mean, where do we even begin with this? Let's start with Jean Shaheen, because her level of arrogance here is honestly off the charts. She walks into this hearing, puts on her tough guy face, and starts throwing out these buzzwords. He's playing the president like a fiddle. We gave up all our leverage. We took NATO off the table. She is so desperate to create this narrative that Trump just handed the keys to the kingdom over to Vladimir Putin. But what happens? Rubio looks at her and completely shuts down the entire premise. He brings receipts. He asks her the simplest question: what has Putin actually gained? And notice she doesn't have a real answer. Rubio points out the absolute undeniable facts. Not a single solitary sanction has been lifted. Zero. The Russians woke up with the exact same economic penalties they had a year ago. Ukraine is still getting weapons. Ukraine is still getting intelligence. Europe is actually preparing more sanctions. But Shaheen just ignores that because it doesn't fit her neat little script. She just keeps doubling down. More pressure, more money, more escalation. But here is the part of the hearing that should be front page news everywhere. This is the part that the establishment absolutely hates talking about. And Rubio just said the quiet part out loud. Rubio flat out tells her, we are running out of stuff to give them. He literally says, we don't have the Patriot missile batteries to send. We are literally begging our NATO allies to send theirs because the United States' cupboard is getting bare. And even worse, he admits that the West is burning through munitions faster than the entire Western world can manufacture them. Does Jean Shaheen think that missiles and artillery shells just spawn in a video game? Does she think you can just print more weapons the way the government prints money? This is the danger of these arrogant DC politicians. They sit in their comfortable leather chairs, wearing their nice suits, demanding we keep throwing billions of taxpayer dollars and endless weapons into a meat grinder, completely ignoring the basic math of military production. They want to sound tough on TV, but they have zero grip on logistics. And then Rubio drops the ultimate reality check. He says there is no military solution to this crisis. Boom. That's it. That is the truth. Nobody in Washington wants to admit, because it means the endless gravy train for the military-industrial complex has to slow down. The reality is exactly what Rubio described. Russia wants territory they aren't entitled to and can't take. And Ukraine wants to take back territory that they physically cannot retake militarily. It has to end in a deal. It has to, but people like Jean Shaheen, they'd rather keep writing blank checks and pretending victory is just one more billion-dollar aid package away. It's reckless, it's out of touch. And frankly, it's insulting to our intelligence. Rubio absolutely humiliated her today, not by calling her names, but just by forcing her to look at the math. And the math does not support her emotional, partisan outrage. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you tired of these out-of-ouch politicians as I am? Do you think Rubio nailed it here? Drop a like on the video, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already,